Hello everyone, you might think he's moved on. You might think the silence means peace, that his coldness means closure, but deep down, beneath that pride, behind those unread messages, is a man who's drowning in everything he never said. He won't admit it, not to you, not to his friends, not even to himself, because to admit it would be to face what he lost. It would mean facing the truth that haunts him. You were the piece he pushed away. He checks your last scene. He replays old memories like they're the only music he has left. He stares at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering how silence replaced your voice. He's not chasing, not calling, not texting, not because he doesn't care, but because his ego is louder than his heart. He thought you'd always be there. He thought you'd forgive the distance, the coldness, the neglect. But now you're different. Now you glow in a way that scares him, because that glow doesn't need him anymore. And that truth, it burns. He smiles in pictures, but it's forced. He talks to others, but they don't reach him. No one sees the empty space where you once stood, but he feels it. Every single day, and still, he says nothing. Why? Because to ask for you back would require vulnerability. It would mean admitting he broke something beautiful. It would mean putting down his pride and saying 3 terrifying words, I was wrong. So no, he won't admit it. But he wants you back, desperately, silently, regretfully, and the longer he waits, the more he realizes you're not waiting anymore. On the surface, he looks untouched, calm, maybe even content. He goes about his day like nothing's missing. He laughs, he works, he scrolls through social media like life is just moving forward. But beneath that cool exterior is a battlefield of emotions he's trying to suppress. Not because he doesn't feel them, but because feeling them out loud would mean exposing everything he's worked so hard to bury. Ego is his shield. Silence is his armor. He convinces himself that staying quiet makes him stronger, that if he doesn't show hurt, he hasn't lost anything. But that's the lie he tells himself when the guilt creeps in late at night. Because somewhere deep inside, he knows he's not over it. He's not okay. He's not even close to moving on. He tells himself not to reach out, not to show weakness. So instead of messaging you, he types and deletes. He watches your stories but skips past them quickly, hoping you won't notice but secretly wishing you would. This isn't strength. This is fear dressed as pride. He's scared of looking vulnerable, scared that opening up would mean admitting he was wrong, admitting he cared more than he let on, and that he still does. He doesn't want anyone to see the chaos inside. Not his friends, not his family, not even himself, so he hides behind sarcasm, distractions, and shallow connections. He puts on a show for the world, but in the quiet moments, when no one's watching, that mask starts to crack. He doesn't show it in public, not at work, not with friends, not even in passing conversations. But when the world quiets down, when the noise fades, and the day finally lets go, that's when it hits him. It's in those still, silent hours of the night, when the room feels too big and the bed too empty, that the weight of his choices starts to sink in. He replays every word he didn't say, every emotion he brushed off, every chance he had to fix things, but didn't. He's haunted not by your absence, but by the role he played in creating it. The things he thought didn't matter back then now echo in his mind like thunder. The little ways you cared, the warmth you brought, the patience you gave, they all come rushing back in high definition when the world stops spinning. In the loneliness, he sees it clearly. You weren't asking for perfection. You were asking for effort, for honesty, for presence, and he gave you distance. He gave you doubt, and now he lives with the version of you that exists only in his memory. He scrolls through old photos, not to relive joy, but to torture himself with what he let slip through his fingers. The way you looked at him when you believed in him, the way you smiled when you felt safe. He can't recreate that, not with anyone else, not even with time. Every room he enters now feels colder. Every laugh feels less genuine. Because deep down he knows it's not just that he lost you, it's that he let you go. Regret doesn't scream in his face during the day. It waits quietly. It lingers in the background while he laughs with others, while he pretends to move forward. But it's in the quiet, when the laughter fades, the texts stop buzzing, and the world slips into silence, that regret creeps in like a ghost and sits beside him. When the lights are off and his phone screen is dark, that's when the weight of what he lost wraps itself around his chest. He lies there, staring at the ceiling, drowning in a silence he once chose, and now desperately wishes he could escape. The stillness no longer brings him peace. It brings him memories, sharp, vivid, unrelenting memories. Not the dramatic movie scene ones, but the soft, everyday ones that once felt so ordinary and now feel priceless. The way your voice sounded in the morning, the way your presence filled a room with warmth without you even trying. The way you always noticed when something was off, even when he swore he was fine. He didn't realize those little things would someday become echoes in his mind, whispers in his chest that grow louder when no one else is around. He replays conversations like a broken record, searching for the moment everything started to fall apart. He thinks of what he could have said differently, what he should have done instead. And suddenly, the man who once acted so sure of himself, the man who thought walking away made him strong, he starts to crumble under the truth he never wanted to admit. He scrolls through old photos not to smile, but to punish himself. He reads over your old texts, wishing he could respond now with the man he's become, not the one who didn't appreciate you when he had the chance. No one around him knows the war inside his heart. He'll never confess it, but his nights are not peaceful. They are filled with shadows of the past, shadows he created. He could reach out, one message, one call, one honest moment. That's all it would take to break the silence, but he won't, because pride has him shackled to a version of himself that looks strong on the outside and is falling apart within. His fingers hover over the keyboard more times than he'll ever admit. He types the words, "I miss you," "I'm sorry," "Can we talk?" And every time he deletes them, because for him, vulnerability is a battlefield and he's too afraid to lose. Pride convinces him that silence is power, that the first one to speak is the weaker one. But deep down, he knows his silence isn't strength. It's fear wearing armor. It's shame hiding behind a straight face. He's afraid that if he reaches out, you'll hear the crack in his voice, that you'll feel the desperation in his tone, and worse, that you won't feel anything at all. He replays scenarios in his mind where he says what's really in his heart. He imagines telling you that he messed up, that he sees it all now with clarity, that he would do things differently if given the chance. But imagination is as far as he lets himself go. because the moment it becomes real, he'd have to lower the walls he spent a lifetime building. To reach out would mean confronting the truth that his choices had consequences, that his silence wasn't noble, and that you were never just a phase, you were the one he never had the courage to keep. So instead of reaching for honesty, he hides in the comfort of distance. He chooses control over connection, because admitting he still cares would mean admitting he was wrong, and for him, being wrong feels more unbearable than being alone. In the beginning, he thought you'd always be there. Not out of malice, not out of cruelty, but out of comfort. He got used to your patience, your forgiveness, your constant presence. He mistook your loyalty for permanence. You see, he didn't notice the quiet strength it took for you to keep showing up. He didn't realize how many times you bit your tongue instead of starting a fight. How often you chose understanding over walking away. To him, that effort blended into the background. He thought love meant never having to question if someone would stay even if you gave them every reason to leave. He saw your kindness as a given, not a gift. He saw your texts as routine, not as someone choosing him over and over. He saw your care, your late night check-ins, your subtle emotional support, but he didn't value them because he never imagined a day when they'd stop. He thought you'd always be the one to fix things, to reach out first, to forgive again. He thought you'd always wait until he figured himself out, until he was ready to show up fully. He thought he had time. But what he failed to realize was that even the strongest hearts can break, even the most loyal souls can get tired, and eventually, the person who always made room for him would start choosing herself. He didn't see your value because you never forced him to. You never begged to be seen. You simply kept giving quietly, consistently, completely. And now, in the silence that follows your absence, he finally begins to understand what you were. You weren't just love, you were safe space, you were grace, you were home. But back then, he treated your heart like a familiar place, a place he could leave and return to at will, never imagining that one day the door would be locked, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Now he sees your worth not in your presence, but in your absence. He watches you now from afar, not always with his eyes, but with a kind of awareness that never leaves him. You're glowing in a way he never anticipated. Not just in your appearance, but in your spirit. There's a peace in you now, a strength in your silence, and it terrifies him more than losing you ever did. Because for the first time, he's seeing you outside of the version he created in his mind. You're no longer the girl who waited for his messages. You're no longer the one who softened your light to make him feel secure. You're not chasing, you're not questioning, and you're not holding space for him in your heart like you used to. That realization cuts him in a place deeper than pride. It strikes his sense of control. The part of him that always assumed you'd be one step behind him, hoping he'd turn around. But now you're not behind him. You're not even looking in his direction. You've stepped into something new, something he can't follow unless he evolves. And evolution is something he's still resisting. He notices the way your energy has shifted. You're focused. He sees it in your work, in your smile, in the way you laugh more freely. You've begun loving yourself in all the places you once sought validation from him. And that growth, it's undeniable. It radiates from you in every word you don't say to him anymore. He feels the distance not just in miles, but in maturity. He feels the gap widening between the person you were with him and the person you are without him. And it's not just the loss of a relationship that haunts him, it's the fact that you're thriving without his presence, that you've bloomed in the exact soil he thought would break you. And maybe he won't admit it aloud, but somewhere inside, he's grieving the version of you he took for granted. The version that would have still accepted him, flawed and inconsistent. Now that version is gone. You've grown into someone he doesn't quite recognize, and that's the part that hurts him the most, that your strength, your healing, your radiance no longer includes him. He may look like he's moved on. You might see him surrounded by people, laughing, talking, even flirting, but don't be fooled by the noise around him, because the truth is he's never felt more disconnected, not from the world, not from people, but from himself. No matter how many faces are in the room, there's a void inside him that no one else can fill, a hollow space where your presence once lived. He tries to distract himself with conversations, temporary connections, shallow intimacy, but none of it touches the part of him that aches the most, his heart. He listens to others talk, but he's not really there. His body shows up, but his mind is stuck in the past. He compares every new connection to what you two had, not even realizing he's doing it. Because the truth is, he can't feel deeply anymore. Not because he's numb, but because he knows what it felt like to be truly understood, and everything else feels empty in comparison. They laugh at his jokes. They praise his charm, they say all the right things, but still, something's missing, that spark, that depth, that emotional intimacy that once came effortlessly when he was with you. He used to take for granted the way you read between his silences, how you could sense when something was wrong even when he said, "I'm fine." Now, he's surrounded by people who take his words at face value, and that surface-level understanding feels like isolation. He tells himself he's just not ready to connect again. But deep down, he knows the truth. He already connected with someone, you, and now that he's lost that kind of connection, he doesn't know how to build it with anyone else. He fills his time with distractions, scrolling, talking, going out, pretending, but none of it brings peace. None of it brings him closer to feeling whole, because every person he meets feels like a temporary fix for a permanent scar. And no matter how far he runs from that emptiness, it follows him, because the one connection that truly mattered, the one that reached his soul, is the one he pushed away. To the outside world, he carries himself like a man who doesn't look back. Stoic, unshaken, unbothered, but the truth is, he's mastered the art of appearing fine while falling apart inside. Reaching out to you, he's thought about it more times than he can count. A simple message, a voice note, a question that opens the door. He knows exactly what he'd say. He's played it out in his head in countless variations, what to say if you respond coldly, what to say if you don't respond at all. But every time he gets close to doing it, something stops him. Not logic, not peace, but pride, that deep-rooted voice inside him that whispers, if you reach out first, you lose. He's been conditioned to see vulnerability as a weakness. To admit he misses you would be to admit he feels. To apologize would be to accept that he caused pain. To ask for another chance would be to kneel in a world that taught him to never bend. And so he pretends. Pretends he doesn't care. Pretends he's fine. Pretends that letting go was a decision he's proud of. But inside, he battles with the truth he won't speak. That he wants to talk to you. That he wants to know if you're okay. That he wants to tell you he's not, but pride won't let him. He equates silence with strength. He thinks the one who cares less wins, so he stays quiet, locked in an emotional prison of his own making. He chooses dignity over depth, control over connection, and every time he chooses not to reach out, he trades authenticity for ego. The saddest part is, he doesn't even realize that his silence doesn't make him powerful. It makes him lonely, and he may tell himself that staying silent protects him, but in reality, it's the very thing keeping him from the one thing he truly wants, reconciliation. Yet still he waits, watching, hoping, wanting, but never moving, because in his world, admitting he was wrong feels more terrifying than losing you forever. He wears silence like a mask. To the world, it looks like composure. To his friends, it looks like he's just keeping his distance. To strangers, it looks like a man who's moved on, who doesn't have time for drama, who's focused on his life. But behind that silence is something far more complex. It's not peace. It's not maturity. It's grief. A grief that has no ceremony, no goodbye, no closure, just a quiet ache that lingers through the hours, through the days, through every moment that reminds him of what he lost. He tells himself, she'll be fine, she'll move on, she'll forget. Just so he can live with the fact that he did nothing to make it right. But the truth is, every day that passes in silence feels like another small betrayal of what you once shared. This silence wasn't chosen with confidence, it was chosen out of fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of having to face the pain he caused. So instead of saying what's on his heart, he says nothing, and that nothing speaks louder than any apology ever could. He lies in bed at night, not with peace, but with a storm inside, not with closure, but with questions that haunt him. Did she know how much I cared? Did I wait too long? Was she waiting for me to say something before she stopped waiting? He scrolls through memories in his mind like old photographs, moments where he could have shown up, moments where he could have held on tighter, moments where he stayed silent when he should have fought for you. His silence is not strength. It's not the mark of a man who's over it. It's the mark of a man who doesn't know how to express what he truly feels. It's the armor he wears to protect himself from vulnerability, because saying, I miss you, or I messed up, or I wish I had done things differently, would mean opening wounds he's not ready to face, so he stays quiet. He lets the silence grow, not because it brings healing, but because he doesn't know how to speak through the sorrow he's buried inside. And every day that passes without a word is another day he quietly mourns something he pretends no longer matters. He thinks about you more than he wants to, more than he admits, more than he understands. It's not just nostalgia. It's a quiet, aching desire that creeps into his everyday life. You're not just a memory to him. You're a constant presence in his mind, even if you're no longer beside him. He wants you back. He wants to hear your laugh again, wants to feel your calm energy in the chaos of his world, wants to wake up and know he didn't ruin the one thing that felt real, but that want it's buried beneath layers of hesitation, shame, and uncertainty. He doesn't know where to begin. He fears the look in your eyes might be different now. He fears the softness he once saw there has been replaced by something he calls distance, disappointment, indifference. So he holds it all in. He lets the desire stay quiet. He carries it like a secret, one that burns a little more each time he sees you thriving without him. He wonders if you'd even listen, if the damage is too deep, if the time is too far gone. And even though everything inside him wants to reach out, to ask for another chance, to start over, he keeps swallowing the words before they form. He tells himself, she looks fine now. She doesn't need me. She won't want to hear what I have to say. He wants you back, but he's afraid you won't recognize him anymore. That maybe you've changed too much, grown too far. He wonders if the version of him you once loved is gone, and if the version of you he wants back would never let him close again. He plays it safe. He lingers in silence. He chooses to suffer quietly instead of risking rejection loudly, because to admit he still wants you would mean taking accountability for every moment he made you feel like he didn't. It would mean opening wounds that never fully healed. It would mean being seen, raw and imperfect, by the one person who once saw the best in him and walked away. So he watches, he waits. He carries that desire like a weight that grows heavier with every day. He doesn't say what his heart has been screaming all along. So if you've ever questioned whether he still thinks about you, he does. If you've ever wondered whether he regrets what happened, he does. And if you've ever felt like he stopped caring, know this: he cares more now than he ever did, but he may never be man enough to say it. Because sometimes people don't come back, not because they don't want to, but because they no longer know how. But you've grown, you've healed, you've risen from the version of you that waited for closure and become the woman who created it for herself. And maybe he'll always carry that ache in silence, forever haunted by the love he couldn't keep. But you carry freedom, you carry peace, and most of all, you carry the strength of someone who no longer waits to be chosen because she finally chose herself.